The gavel cracks like thunder and the room jolts, and Judge Mercer said, "Order," while the pitchers tremble and a coffee cup tips, and my chest feels like it's split. The prosecutor's smile is thin as wire. "Ethan Ward," said, "breathe, Jordan." I breathe, Ash. A reporter's pen freezes, and the bailiff stiffens, and a juror grips the armrest like a rail on a sinking ship. The witness stand becomes a cliff, and Lena Hart said, "I lied," and the gallery exhales as one pained animal. The floor swallows the spill, a dark stain spreading like a map of bad roads. Cole said, "Clarify your statement," and the words slice the air. My name hangs like a noose over a calm sea. I taste metal and count my heartbeats like evidence tags. The judge's eyes are gray stone, and the ceiling fans churn stale heat. Ethan said, "Do not react," and I fail by blinking too slow. The juror whispers to his own conscience. The recorder light blinks a red dot that feels like a laser on my hope. Lena said, "It was pressure," and the gallery hisses. The room becomes a single breath, held by 50 lungs as if truth might shatter, if anyone exhales. The silence after the crack feels like a verdict by itself, and Ethan said, "Stay with me," as I watch the stain crawl toward my shoes. The judge waits, as if patience could squeeze honesty from stone. Cole said, "Let the record reflect," and the court reporter keys a tiny storm. My heartbeat trips, and I try to anchor to the wood grain that runs like rivers through this room. Lena stares at the microphone as if it might bite. I remember the night in the station, the buzzing light, the voice that said, "Just say it, and you can go home." The memory slides a knife under my ribs. Ethan said, "You are not your worst moment." The juror rubs his thumb over a coin he should not have in there. The gallery feeds on rumor and sugar, and I smell burnt coffee and fear. "Da," Cole said. "Miss Hart, were you coerced?" And the word scrapes. The clock ticks like a metronome set too fast. I press my tongue to the back of my teeth, a barricade against foolish words. Somewhere a reporter whispers a headline into her phone, and I feel my life becoming copy. The judge said, "Proceed with caution," and the caution arrives too late. The court reporter's fingers dance, and the transcript becomes a fresh trap, and Ethan said, "Listen to the question, not the tone." Lena inhales like a diver about to vanish. Cole said, "Who told you what to say?" And the words fan old embers. I see the station again, the detective's smile that never reached his eyes. The room had smelled like disinfectant and rain, and the clock refused to move. I remember my signature shaking like bad weather on a thin line. The juror shifts, the leather creaks, and it sounds like a door closing. The gallery leans forward until the pews complain. The judge said, "Answer only what is asked," and my lungs answer by forgetting how to fill. Ethan's cufflinks catch a stripe of light, small moons in this weathered sky. Lena said, "They promised it would stop," and the word promised falls like glass. I glance at the flag and feel no shelter. Somewhere, a phone vibrates and dies under a stern stare. The stain on the tile has almost stopped moving, and I wish time would learn from it. The question lands like a trapdoor, and the floor drops in memory, and Ethan said, "Hold," but holding feels like drowning. Cole said, "Name the officer," and Lena's eyes find mine for 1 second that lasts a lifetime. I shake my head a fraction, and the fraction weighs a ton. Whoa. The air conditioner coughs, and the lights flicker a heartbeat. The juror scratches a note he will later deny writing. The judge's patience is a cliff edge. The gallery rustles, and paper whispers like tall grass before a storm. I think of the station room's plastic chair that chewed my posture, and the taped X on the table. I think of the sentence that would make the noise stop. Ethan said, "Do not volunteer pain to people who sell it," and I feel seen and flayed. Cole said, "Answer," and the syllables march like boots. Lena said, "Detective Rourke," and the name throws a window open to rain. The room hums with sudden appetite. I swallow hope, and it burns. The name hangs like a bell tone over a field of glass, and Ethan said, "Noted," while Cole's pen draws a single line that feels like a scar across paper. The judge said, "We will hear no outbursts," and the gallery obeys with hungry silence. My breath stumbles as if the air has steps I cannot see. I remember Rourke's voice saying, "Everyone leaves here eventually," and the word eventually wore my patience down to bone. The court reporter looks like a pianist at the end of a hard piece. The juror tucks the coin away and closes his eyes, a private prayer to rules he does not follow. Ethan said, "We will address coercion." And the word feels like a small door in a long wall. Cole said, "We will address truth," and truth suddenly looks like a blade. I rest my fingertips on the table to feel the grain and avoid feeling everything else. The clock exhales one click, and the stain on the tile finally stops. Somewhere thunder growls behind the courthouse, and the storm arrives on cue. The storm outside drums against the tall glass, and inside the silence is a coffin. Ethan said, "You must hold steady," but my insides rattle like loose nails in a box. The jury's eyes pry at my skin, searching for weakness. Cole said, "The record is tainted by lies, and each syllable digs deeper." I think of the life I had before this, of the medals on the shelf, and the interviews where I smiled like a man untouched. Now that smile feels like evidence too. Judge Mercer said, "We will test every claim," and I flinch at the word test as if I were a specimen pin. Lena looks hollowed, her lips chewed raw by guilt. Ethan whispered, "Do not bleed in front of wolves," and the metaphor feels too close. The gallery leans forward, the storm's echo masking shallow gasps. I stare at my hands, remembering them once strong, now trembling. The court reporter's keys hammer like a typewriter of doom. The air smells of wet wool and dust. The truth is not enough. Here it is just another weapon. The juror coughs, a small human crack in the wall of judgment, and Ethan said, "Anchor on me," while I feel my chest folding inward. Cole shuffles her notes like a magician preparing a trick. I think of my daughter's face, a flash of her hair in sunlight, a soundless laugh, and then the thought feels forbidden in here. "Judge Mercer," said, "proceed with caution," and his voice is gravel on stone. Lena's hands tremble under the stand rail as if bracing against a wave. The gallery whispers like leaves in rain, and the bailiff glares them still. Ethan said, "Fear will make you theirs. Hold it," and the words scratch a raw part of me. My throat locks as if speaking might snap everything. The fluorescent lights flicker, painting us all in sick, pale hues. Cole said, "This defendant's silence says more than his words," and my silence howls louder than any scream. My nails bite into my palm, the sting a reminder I am not gone yet. The storm growls again, its echo inside me. The bailiff's boots click like metronomes, steady reminders of prison steps. I watch Lena sink lower, shoulders collapsing as if her spine gave up. Ethan said, "She's unraveling, and that may save you." My stomach flips at the thought of salvation built on someone else's ruin. Cole said, "Did you write the statement willingly?" And the air freezes. I remember the detective's voice pressing down, the cheap clock, the smell of stale coffee, and despair. My pen dragged across the page because leaving felt like oxygen. "Judge Mercer," said, "answer directly," and the command hangs. Lena's lips barely move as she says, "No," and the word snaps like brittle glass. The gallery buzzes, a swarm of hungry flies. Ethan glances at me, and I see in his eyes the reflection of a man who is breaking and yet holding. My chest tightens against the truth bent into lies. Outside, thunder punches the sky. The truth falls into the room like broken plaster, and everyone breathes differently. Ethan said, "That's the first stone," and his voice is steady steel. Cole stiffens, her knuckles whitening around the pen. Judge Mercer taps the bench once, a sound like a nail sealing wood. I stare at Lena, and she stares back, both of us drowning in a pool neither of us built. The jury exchanges glances, and I read suspicion etched in their brows. The gallery leans as if closer proximity could make the scandal taste sharper. Ethan said, "Stay still." Let her words ripple, and stillness feels like drowning with elegance. I smell sweat and varnished wood. A reporter scribbles with the fury of someone who knows tomorrow's headline will sting. Cole said, "We will return to this," and her restraint is a coil ready to strike. The storm outside claps, answering the coil. The pause after truth feels endless, like standing in a hallway with every door locked. Ethan said, "One fracture makes a wall crumble," and I try to believe him. The jury member taps a hidden rhythm on his knee, and the sound needles me. Cole smooths her notes with surgical calm. Judge Mercer said, "Let the record stand," and the gavel taps lightly, final as a tombstone. I taste fear like metal in my mouth. My thoughts claw at freedom but find only walls. Ethan's gaze is steady, a lighthouse in storm fog. Lena bows her head, her hair slipping loose, a curtain for shame. The gallery erupts into murmurs, and the bailiff snaps them into silence. Cole said, "We will untangle every thread," and my chest tightens with the weight of threads already strangling me. I press my palms flat on the table, feeling the grooves of old scratches, wondering who else once sat here, whispering to themselves that truth would save them. The storm has passed, but inside the courtroom the air is heavier, like smoke without fire. Ethan said, "Now they turn the screws," and his warning rattles through my bones. Cole stands straighter, her voice sharp as she said, "Witness credibility is fragile, and contradictions tear holes in truth." Lena flinches at the word contradictions, and the jury stiffens like they felt the sting themselves. Judge Mercer said, "Proceed carefully," but Cole is a blade in velvet. I remember the detective leaning close in that station room, his voice whispering, "No one will believe you anyway." My stomach knots. Ethan whispered, "Remember, their strength is noise, and I wish silence could shield me." The gallery's chatter builds then dies, a wave contained. I grip the table edge so tight my nails ache. This is no longer about law, it is about survival. The juror coughs again, but this time it is drowned by Cole's clipped question, "Why did you alter your account?" Lena looks down, her hair slipping forward, a shield for shame. Ethan said, "She's their target, not you," but the crossfire feels personal. Judge Mercer taps his gavel once, not for order, but to remind us all that time still moves. My heartbeat thrums louder than the sound. The gallery leans as if the rail were elastic, stretching toward scandal. I think of my mother's voice telling me, "Truth will protect you," and the irony tastes bitter now. Ethan said, "Breathe," and the word feels too fragile for the weight in this room. The court reporter's fingers strike harder as if recording pain itself. I try to swallow, but it catches lodged like glass. The contradictions pile like bricks, each one heavier, and Ethan said, "They are burying her with detail," and the metaphor stings. Cole said, "So you lied under oath," her tone smooth but lethal. Lena trembles, words failing before they leave her lips. Judge Mercer watches, his brow a stone wall. My chest tightens. I feel every eye in the room swinging to me, as if her unraveling drags me with it. The gallery whispers are now sharp little knives. I remember Detective Rourke's promise that silence would end the night, and how silence became my chain. Ethan said, "Not your fire to put out, but the smoke is choking me." The juror scratches his notes again, lines no one else will ever see. I bite my tongue to stop myself from shouting. Ethan rises, his chair scraping, and the sound is defiance itself. He said, "Objection," his tone like flint striking steel. Judge Mercer raises a hand and said, "Sustained in part," his eyes heavy on Cole. The tension loosens, but only by a thread. Cole stiffens, her smile thin, her eyes plotting their next strike. Lena exhales, and the air trembles with her. The jury watches with the hunger of wolves denied a meal. I remember being young, standing at the starting line of a race, the silence before the gun, the moment when everything could change. Now that moment feels endless. Ethan said, "We will hold the ground," and his stance is a wall. My fingers dig grooves into the table. The gallery rustles with disappointment at conflict pause. The gavel's echo still vibrates inside me. The session pushes forward like a tide that refuses to retreat. Cole said. We will revisit. Her voice honey wrapped around barbed wire. Ethan sits but does not relax, shoulders rigid. Judge Mercer, said the jury, will weigh contradictions carefully, and the words feel like a warning disguised as fairness. Lena slumps, and shame drapes her like a second skin. I watch the juror scribble again, his face carved with something private. The gallery exhales disappointment, and the silence they leave behind is louder than their whispers. Ethan said, "This is their game, not your confession," but my body still feels cornered. I think of all I have already lost, the medals collecting dust, the child waiting for a father no one trusts. The truth is drowning, and I am treading water alone. The day has shifted into a darker hue, though the lights inside blaze mercilessly. Cole said, Exhibit 42, and the courtroom's pulse falters. Ethan leans toward me and said, brace yourself, but I already feel the ground cracking beneath me. A photograph lands on the screen, and the jury gasps as if oxygen was snatched away. Lena's eyes widen, guilt blooming like bruises on her face. Judge Mercer clears his throat, his tone grave as he said, "This changes the record." My body locks in place, though my mind runs back to the night of forged ink, the pen forced into my hand. Ethan whispered, "They've pulled a new card," and every word slices. The gallery murmurs in fever, their whispers like claws against walls. I remember thinking I was signing silence, not surrender. Cole said, "The defendant's confession is clear, and the word confession poisons the air." I want to scream that the truth is a cage built for me. The projection glows like an accusation carved in light. Ethan rises sharply, his chair scraping the floor, and said, "Objection! The evidence is manufactured." His voice is thunder under marble. Cole replies, "The handwriting matches, the signature is his, each word deliberate, striking." My pulse claws at my throat, remembering the pen sliding across paper like betrayal itself. Judge Mercer said, "We will hear arguments for authenticity," and the gavel rests heavy as destiny. The juror leans forward, his eyes squinting as though truth could be pulled from ink alone. The gallery exhales in unison, eager vultures circling. Ethan said, "Stay still," and I grip the table, splinters of old wood pressing into my palm. My breath rattles like a draft through broken windows. I see my name glowing on that paper, but it feels like someone else's ghost. Ethan's voice grows sharper as he said, "That confession was coerced. It bears marks of intimidation." The words fire across the courtroom like sparks. Cole smirks, said convenient denial, her tone dipped in venom. The jury scribbles notes, pens scratching like chains dragging. Judge Mercer leans back, heavy with the weight of choice. My mind splinters between past and present, the detective's eyes, the harsh desk lamp, the endless repetition of questions until silence was no longer survival but surrender. I whisper under my breath, "It wasn't mine," but no one hears. Ethan places a hand on my shoulder, anchoring me to the now. The gallery ripples with whispers, cameras clicking like gnats. Lena closes her eyes, as if she too is back in that station. The air grows thick enough to choke. The judge's voice cuts through. "We will recess for 20 minutes. The gavel strikes, echoing finality, and the gallery erupts like a hive disturbed. Ethan turns to me, said, "This is where the war truly begins." My body feels carved from stone, heavy and cracked. Cole gathers her papers, each movement like victory rehearsed. Lena avoids my eyes, shame etched deep, her face a battlefield of guilt. The juror wipes sweat from his brow, pen dangling in nervous fingers. I stand slowly, legs trembling under the weight of accusation. The bailiff watches, her eyes sharp, reminding me the chains are invisible but near. Ethan whispers, "We can turn this," but the words fight to reach me. I stare at the exit door, a freedom barred by lies. The thunder outside is gone, but in my chest it still rages. The courtroom empties into murmurs, the echo of footsteps trailing down marble halls. I remain seated, staring at the paper glow fading from the wall. Ethan said, "They've laid their trap, but every trap has a flaw." His words sound like hope painted on cracked glass. My reflection wavers on the polished table. A stranger I barely know. Cole passes by, her eyes locking with mine, and she said, "See you after recess," a smile sharp enough to cut. The bailiff signals the jury out, their faces unreadable masks. Lena lingers, then stands with the weight of someone breaking under truth. Judge Mercer disappears behind heavy doors, his robe trailing shadows. The gallery filters out, chatter like static, gossip already forming headlines. I exhale slow, and it feels like smoke. Ethan rests a hand flat on the table and said, "Hold steady, this is far from over." The courtroom hums like a hive as the judge returns, and the storm outside has passed, leaving a harsh clarity. Judge Mercer said, "We resume," and the words slice through the anticipation. Cole stands, voice sharpened. The jury must see the truth. Her papers fan like weapons. Ethan whispers, "Their truth is poison. Our truth must bleed louder." My chest feels like it might cave in. Lena stares at her hands, a prisoner of her own silence. The gallery leans forward, eager for a spectacle. I remember my child's face, the photo hidden in my pocket, and the thought steadies me. Cole said, "This confession destroys doubt," and her tone is victory wrapped in silk. The jury stiffens, some nodding, some frowning, each a mirror of bias. Ethan rises, said, "We challenge this, for coercion is not confession," his voice cracking stone. The air snaps with tension, heavy and electric, as if lightning still lingers inside these walls. Ethan strides to the center, his shoes striking the floor like drums. He said, "A signature, under duress, is a weapon, not a truth." His words echo in the silence. Cole smiles faintly, waiting to strike back. The jury scribbles frantically, pens scratching like talons. Judge Mercer watches, his face carved with stone patience. I grip the table edge until my fingers ache. The gallery whispers, and the bailiff silences them with a sharp glare. Ethan points at the document and said, "This paper does not speak, but the bruises of coercion do." My chest swells with a flicker of hope. Cole rises, said Drama, "Cannot erase ink," her voice venomous. The tension builds like thunder trapped in a bottle. My heartbeat counts each second like a drumline in a war. Cole steps forward, voice silk and steel, said, "The accused bends truth like clay, but evidence is iron." Her eyes sweep across the jury, binding them with confidence. My stomach knots, her words carving me open. Ethan counters, said, "Iron rusts when drowned in lies," his tone sharp. The jury looks torn, some nodding at her, some at him, and the divide becomes visible. Lena's hands tremble, her nails carving crescents into her palms. Judge Mercer clears his throat, his gavel resting, ready to drop. The gallery murmurs louder, feeding on conflict. I think of that night, the detective's smile, the endless hours, and my voice cracking under exhaustion. I want to shout, but silence pins me to the chair. Cole, said, "The people demand justice," and the word people feels like a mob at my throat. The storm inside erupts as Ethan slams his palm on the table, said, "Coercion is violence disguised as procedure." His voice ricochets across walls. The jury startles. The gallery gasps. Cole fires back, said, "Objection to theatrics," but the judge allows him to continue, his silence permission enough. My pulse races, hope flickering like fragile flame. Ethan turns to me and said, "They tried to bury you, but the ground rejects the lie." I swallow a lump that feels like chains breaking. The gallery buzzes, reporters scribble with furious hands. Lena watches me, her face carved with guilt and regret. Judge Mercer raises his gavel, said, keep to evidence, but his tone wavers, a crack in his stone mask. The tension is a knife balanced on air. The climax arrives like a storm breaking the ceiling. Cole said, "Then let the defendant speak for himself." Her words a dagger pointed at me. Every eye pivots, the jury hungry, the gallery electric. Ethan leans close, whispered, "You don't owe them a single word." My throat burns, silence screaming louder than speech. Judge Mercer said, "The choice is yours," and his voice is heavy with gravity. I see the photo of my child in my mind. The medals, the life dismantled piece by piece. I feel chains, but I also feel the possibility of fire. Cole smirks, her trap ready to spring. Ethan squeezes my arm, said, "Strength isn't speaking, it's surviving." My chest feels torn between silence and eruption. The courtroom waits, a beast holding its breath. The silence after the climax is brutal, each breath in the courtroom trembling with aftermath. Judge Mercer said, "The jury will deliberate soon," his voice carrying the weight of finality. Ethan whispered, "We have left cracks in their case," though his eyes betray worry. Cole gathers her papers, her smirk faint but satisfied, like a predator licking its teeth. The gallery exhales restless energy, chatter echoing like thunder in halls. I stare at the table's scars, wondering how many lives ended on this wood before mine. Lena clutches her blouse, trembling as though the air itself is suffocating her. My chest feels hollow, truth buried under accusations dressed as law. Ethan said, "Whatever happens, you fought," but the word "fought" tastes like defeat. The juror who scribbles notes wipes sweat from his forehead, his gaze lost. I hear footsteps fading, but none lead to freedom. The gavel rests, but its echo lingers, haunting the air like smoke. Ethan said, "Deliberation is their battlefield now," his voice calm but his hand clenched. Cole leans toward her assistant, murmuring with the ease of victory. Judge Mercer retreats behind chambers, robe trailing like shadow. The gallery disperses, footsteps heavy with gossip. I sit unmoving, as though my body belongs to the chair. Lena finally lifts her head, her eyes wet, her mouth trembling with words unsaid. The bailiff signals us to leave, but Ethan presses a hand to my shoulder, grounding me. My chest tightens as though walls are closing in. Cole glances back, her eyes locking with mine, her smile cold as frost. I whisper to myself, "It wasn't mine," but the words fall dead. The world outside may be clearing, but inside me the storm endures. The deliberation chamber door closes with a thud, leaving me suspended in dread. Ethan said, "They will fight inside that room," his tone even, though his face betrays fatigue. I imagine 12 strangers dissecting my life like vultures circling remains. Cole walks past reporters, her stride sharp, each flashbulb feeding her story. Lena lingers by the doorway, her shoulders bent like a collapsed tower. I feel myself shrinking, memories of that night replaying with cruel clarity. Detective Rourke's voice, the glare of a lamp, my broken silence. Ethan leans close, said, "Do not let their silence destroy you," but their silence is already suffocating me. The gallery empties slowly, whispers dripping poison into the air. I press my palms together, praying to a God I have not called in years. My breath is a blade cutting me from the inside. The waiting is a punishment itself, minutes stretching into hours. Ethan said, "Juries are unpredictable," his voice trying to mask his fear. I stare at the floor tiles, each crack a reminder of fractures within me. Lena approaches quietly, whispering, "I never wanted this," her voice breaking like glass. I turn away, unable to answer, words locked behind bitterness. The bailiff stands guard, his presence a silent reminder of cages waiting. Cole's laughter echoes faintly down the hall, twisting the knife deeper. Ethan's eyes soften, said, "She carries guilt. But guilt won't free you." My stomach churns, the taste of iron in my throat. A reporter snaps a photo, the flash burning like accusation. While I shut my eyes, but the darkness there feels worse than light. The air smells of sweat and coffee long gone cold. At last the jury returns, their faces masked, their eyes heavy with decisions. Judge Mercer said, "We will reconvene," his tone grave. Ethan whispered, "Whatever it is, we face it together." My legs feel foreign as I rise, every step a battle. Cole enters, posture regal, her smile faint, already savoring her victory. The gallery surges back in, their whispers hungry, their pens sharp. Lena sits trembling, her gaze darting anywhere but me. The jury files in, their footsteps a funeral march. I glance at the juror who scribbled endlessly, his eyes unreadable now. Judge Mercer lifts his gavel, said, "The verdict will be read," and silence swallows the room. My breath falters, my chest hollow, the weight of years pressing down. Ethan's hand rests steady on my arm, his grip warm against the cold tide rising in me. The jury foreman rises, paper trembling in his hand. And Judge Mercer said, "Deliver the verdict," his voice grave. Ethan's hand presses firm on my arm, a lighthouse against collapse. Cole's lips curve faintly, tasting victory before it arrives. Lena grips the wooden rail, her knuckles bone white. The gallery leans forward, breaths locked in cages of anticipation. The juror clears his throat, the sound too loud in this silence. My chest feels hollow, the world shrinking into this single moment. I remember the first time the detective said, "It will all be over soon," and now the echo feels like prophecy. Ethan whispered, "No matter what, you're more than this trial." The juror's eyes flicker briefly toward me before reading aloud. My heartbeat drowns the words before they reach me. The words land like stones, shattering the thin glass of hope I held. My breath falters, the sound caught between gasp and silence. Ethan said, "Stay upright," his voice a command against gravity. Cole exhales softly, a smile ghosting her face. The gallery erupts in whispers, pens scratching headlines into existence. Lena lowers her head, tears slipping quietly, as though mourning something that cannot be undone. Judge Mercer said, "Order," his gavel striking, though the noise barely penetrates the storm in my chest. I feel myself shrinking, swallowed by verdict's weight. Ethan whispered, "We appeal, this isn't the end," but the end has already swallowed me whole. My reflection on the polished table looks like a stranger in chains. The room spins, but the chains of silence hold me down. The sentence is read, each syllable an iron chain fastening around me. My lungs seize, the air too sharp to swallow. Ethan squeezes my arm and said, "Breathe," but breath feels like betrayal now. Cole stands, papers gathered neatly, a queen collecting her spoils. The jurors look away, their eyes unwilling to hold the wreckage they created. Lena whispers something inaudible, her lips quivering as if in prayer. The gallery shifts like waves, their hunger finally fed. Judge Mercer said the court is adjourned, his gavel striking the coffin shut. The bailiff steps closer, silent chains ready. Ethan whispers, "This isn't over, not by law, not by truth, but the promise feels thin as air." My heart pounds a rhythm of loss that fills the silence. The bailiff's hand brushes my shoulder, a touch that feels like shackles snapping shut. The gallery rises, their footsteps a storm of judgment. Reporters shout questions, their words sharp as knives. Ethan said, "Keep your head up," his tone raw with fury and loyalty. Cole walks past me, said softly, "Justice served," and the words burn like acid. Lena stares at me, guilt drowning her, but she says nothing. Judge Mercer vanishes behind heavy doors, his robe a shadow that swallows him whole. My legs move without will, each step echoing like chains dragged across stone. Ethan walks beside me, said, "We fight tomorrow, but tomorrow feels like a ghost I'll never reach." The courtroom smells of dust, sweat, and endings. The final sound is not the gavel, but the heavy doors closing behind me, sealing away light. Ethan's voice fades as he says, "We are not done," but the corridor swallows him. The echo of footsteps ahead feels like a countdown to oblivion. My wrists ache with invisible chains, though none yet bind them. Nicole's laughter lingers faintly from behind, the sound of triumph echoing like a curse. Lena's silence is louder than any confession. The hall smells of stone and finality, a tomb disguised as justice. I whisper to myself, I never confessed, but the words vanish into emptiness. The world has decided otherwise. The night awaits and its shadows stretch long. The story ends not with victory, but with silence that will not die.